All right, Chair, you may begin.
Thank you. Welcome everyone to the September 9th, 2021 meeting of the Historic Preservation Commission. We get all the commissioners to start their videos, please. And then we'll go ahead and call the roll.
Chairman Lane.
Present.
Commissioner Carpenter.
Here.
Commissioner Hardees.
Here.
Commissioner Norton.
Here.
Commissioner Jacoby.
Here.
Commissioner Sibley.
Here.
Councilmember Rodriguez.
Here.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. So we do have a quorum and we will continue. All right, second item would be approval of the August 5th, 2021 meeting minutes. Those are in the packet. Do any of the commissioners have any comments or corrections on the minutes? No. Seeing none, I would entertain a motion. Commissioner Jacoby.
Make a motion to approve the minutes.
All right, we got a motion to approve. Do I get a second?
I'll second.
All right, a motion to approve the August minutes by Commissioner Jacoby, seconded by Commissioner Hardees. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Keep them up long enough that we can record. It looks like we have a unanimous approval for those minutes. Thank you. Okay. All right, then this is the report from the chair, which is basically just my opportunity to reach out to anyone who is watching the live stream. We will have opportunities for public invited to be heard. There'll be a general segment and then additional public hearings during each individual item. When that happens, there'll be this screen will pop up. And when the screen pops up, it's time to call in with the toll-free number, enter the meeting ID, and then you'll be put in the queue. We'll call on you by phone number. And when it is your turn, please begin. Well, first off, please make sure to mute your live stream so you don't get feedback. Then state your name and address, and you'll have 3 minutes to provide us your comments. So, thanks for that. Okay, item number 4, communications from HPC staff. Ms. Kruger, what do you have for us?
Hi, everyone. Great to see you all virtually. Hello from Keystone, Colorado. I'm here at the American Planning Association conference, so getting some good professional development. Just some fun. I attended a really interesting community engagement seminar today that focused on youth and had a really great historic preservation project where some high school students completed and successfully were able to designate a landmark. So kind of a fun way to get young people involved in historic preservation. So keeping that on the mind here as we go into comp plan updates and hopefully a historic preservation plan. So just some interesting techniques. Other updates, I participated in grant review for the State Historic Fund. So that was a really cool and interesting experience. Hopefully, one I obviously did not review was the Callahan House, but hopefully we hear back about the city's application for those updates. And further, we would review that as a commission later as well. Code updates are still with our legal team. So again, as soon as those are cleaned up, I will send them to you all, and then we'll have another robust discussion to just kind of keep that going. So my apologies for, kind of the lag here, but hopefully we're able to get those up in the next couple of months. Commissioner Jacoby brought an interesting item to my attention. The budget is getting finalized here. And as you probably remember, we applied for some funds for historic preservation plan, and there was also discussion on a conservation overlay for historic districts. So as I know more about that, how much was funded in for which of those items, I will be sure to loop you all in, and we'll start working on an appropriate engagement plan for that, and how we're going to work with everyone to figure that out. So those are my updates, if there aren't any questions.
Thanks, Jade. Anyone have questions for staff? No. Do you think it would be reasonable that we could get those code updates in the next month or two, just to be able to start acting on them before the end of the year? It feels like we barely started on them at the beginning of the year, and all of a sudden 2021 will be past us. So.
That would be my desire, Chair. I'm going to reach out again to legal and see if they can update us on their timeline. I know they're quite short-staffed right now, as are a lot of city departments. So I'm going to ask for an update, because originally it was supposed to be, August, and then it was September, and now it's looking like October. So I'll hopefully have an update for you all shortly.
That'd be great. I just want to be sensitive to the public perception of the HPC as well, since we've had numerous calls for us to be leaders in this area, and then the folks don't see anything happening other than process, and I could see it pretty easily being perceived as they were ignored, right? And we don't want to necessarily be, passing hot potatoes or pointing fingers or whatever, but it'd be nice to see a little progress. Thanks. Okay. Then I guess our next item is old business, the electronic participation bylaw, because as of today's meeting, this would be the last electronic meeting unless we discussed actually including this in our bylaws. Is that correct?
That's correct. So I think this item would require 2 votes. One to vote on the bylaw and whether or not to include them, which just allows for electronic participation moving forward at any time. So it gives you the option. And then the second thing that we should discuss today would be, what does October's meeting look like? In person with a mask or virtual? So those would be the 2 items.
Okay. Does everyone basically been able to take a look at the bylaws in the packet? And if so, do any commissioners have questions or comments regarding those? I don't see any. So I guess it seems to me worthwhile to go ahead and adopt the bylaws, which allows the commission to have flexibility, whether or not we decide to meet in person or not. That's something that we would then have on record moving forward. Does anybody disagree with that notion, or? Okay. Commissioner Hardes.
I was just going to say, as unpredictable as this last year and a half has been, I think it makes sense to have that provision in our bylaws to give us that flexibility. Doesn't mean we rely on it often, but.
Okay. Any other commissioners with comments? And if not, I would entertain a motion to approve the bylaws.
I motion that we adopt the electronic meeting provision into our bylaws.
Okay, I've got a motion to adopt the bylaws. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, so I've got a motion by Commissioner Norton and second by Commissioner Hardy. Some of this is I have to bounce back and forth, and whoever I see first is who I'm getting. All in favor of adopting the bylaws for electronic meetings, please raise your hand, hold them up there. Okay, looks like that passes unanimously as well. So then the second part of this would be what we do next. And I suppose we could certainly take this as a meeting by meeting position, each meeting, at least for now, decide what we're doing next. So as of now, we would be meeting in person next week or next month, sorry. What's the commissioner, now that we've adopted the bylaws, now we have flexibility, what say ye?
So the Boulder Mandate is probably still going to be running. Has anybody heard when that's supposed to be over? For masks?
I have not.
Okay. I'm thinking if it's still going, we're kind of stuck for masks, I think at that point, aren't we, for the county?
Yeah, Jay, do you know what's the city council doing? We could just follow suit with what they are as an option. I assume that if they're up on the dais and they're being recorded, are they wearing masks or are they even doing this at all?
Yeah.
Since the mandate has gone into effect, I'm not sure what their plan is. Actually, I think they'll still be wearing masks and still be meeting in person. I would need to check with legal whether or not the speaker was allowed to remove mask while speaking and then put it back on, or what that looked like. For deciding for next month, though, I would go under the assumption that if it were in person, it would be mask full time.
Okay, thanks. Commissioner Jacoby, did you have something you want to offer?
I was just going to say that we're going everywhere else in this this place, 7 days a week, doing the same thing. I think we could meet. I would feel comfortable meeting with masks. I know I've been vaccinated. I don't want to impose and ask what everyone else's vaccination status is, but presumably if we've all been vaccinated and we're wearing masks, the risk is acceptable at this point. So I would say going forward, I'd be happy to have an in-person meeting next meeting. That being said, certainly even I can make Zoom work sometimes. I've gotten it to work here, and so that's remarkable to me. And this is an acceptable alternative if people feel otherwise. But I think I personally feel comfortable meeting in another month personally.
Okay. And I'll give you my 2 cents just because I have to kind of run this thing. I have a little tiny bit of hearing issue, and the masks are really tough for me because I don't get the facial expression and the lip piece and all that other stuff. And so I find it actually rather difficult to have a conversation when I can't see people's faces and lips. So that's just not as the chair, but just as a commissioner, I would be okay if we stayed this way, only because it ends up being harder. But I'm also willing, if everybody else wanted to go in person, that would be fine. I'd make it work, but I don't mind this because of that particular aspect.
Where's the meeting going to be? Is the Civic Center open again?
That's correct. It is.
Okay, so it would be in there. Okay.
I would feel more comfortable if we are going to meet that we wore masks when we spoke, that we didn't take masks off. So if it would be easier for you, Steve, for us to meet on Zoom, I am perfectly happy to have another virtual meeting next month.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not real excited to do a ton of in-person stuff. I think that in many parts of our lives, we're being boxed back into in-person, and from everything I've read, people are anticipating that this fall could be another bad round of COVID. So, if that coupled with, accessibility issues, I agree with you, Steve. It can be difficult to understand folks sometimes in masks. I also have a slight hearing issue. So I'm happy to stick with Zoom in October, everybody.
Okay, Any other comments, or if not, again, happy to entertain a motion for our meeting location, if you will, next month.
I'll make a motion that we meet virtually over Zoom next month.
Okay, we got a motion to meet virtually next month. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Norton, seconded by Commissioner Jacoby. All in favor of meeting virtually in October, please raise your hand. Hold it up there. Okay, we've got unanimous approval for that. Thank you, commissioners. So we'll see you all in these little boxes again until things finally settle. Okay, great. All right, that gets us to public invited to be heard. So this is the portion of our hearing for anyone out there who would like to speak to something that is not on the agenda. If you're watching and would like to comment on something that is on the agenda, you'll have an opportunity to during those particular items. So at this moment, we'll take a 5-minute break. Commissioners can go ahead and mute and turn off their streams. Public, please call in using the toll-free number, enter the meeting ID shown on the screen, press pound, mute, and then again, you'll be in the queue and called on by your phone number. All right, we'll check back in 5 minutes. Thank you. think it's been about 5 minutes. Do we have anybody in the queue?
No, Chair, we do not have any callers.
Okay. Well, if all the commissioners can come back online, I will go ahead and close the public invited to be heard portion of the meeting, and we'll move on to new business. First of which is a certificate of appropriateness for the Firehouse Art Center. Ms. Kruger, do you have a overview for us?
I do, and we also have the applicant here as well. So I will give a little introduction and discussion, and then turn it over to the applicant if we have any more questions. So normally for a historic sign, this would be something we would handle administratively. But because this is a new sign on the west side of the building, I thought it was appropriate to bring it forward and have a discussion with you all to see what we thought was appropriate. So in addition to the Historic Preservation Commission, the LDDA Design Advisory Committee also needs to review. And it also needs to meet code requirements, of course. So I've included some of the notes from the Design Advisory Committee in the certificate of appropriateness application, as well as the design. So I think the biggest concern from the Design Advisory Committee was that the sign appeared white. So some of the conditions of approval, if we move forward with this sign, might be that more color be incorporated into this design, dimensions, materials, electrical conduit be labeled in the final SketchUp model before approval. And then in addition to approval from HPC, it also be approved by the LDDA. So those were the thoughts that staff had, and I will let the commission ask staff or the applicant any questions.
Okay, thanks. Any commissioners have questions for Ms. Kruger before we open it up to the applicant? No. Okay. So we have the applicant here. So Mr. Northcutt, all right. Yeah, if there's anything you'd like to offer by way of informal presentation.
Sure. So thanks for having me here. We think that this sign could be really impactful for not only the firehouse, as well as the downtown. We get a lot of traffic, pedestrian and auto, along Kaufman and 4th. And we think that by kind of engaging and that corner, that it could really be beneficial. So Jay brings up a very good point. The sign is not intended to be white. It was just kind of a massing drawing. We are expecting it to be monochromatic, so it would either be constructed of bent aluminum and either like a matte black finish or brushed aluminum, so that it would kind of maybe conjure up those kind of 1930s modern kind of the kind of heyday of the cinema, if you will. And the intent would be that the sign would really be not changed very often, but reflect events that are going on at the firehouse, like monthly exhibits and so forth. The sign itself would be internally illuminated, and there'd probably be some accent lighting, but everything would be, as Jay referred to earlier, everything would need to be approved by the city and their, foot candle requirements and for outdoor lighting. So we've reached out to a local sign vendor. They're excited about it. They think it would be really exciting. I think they're the ones doing the Moe's Bagel sign as well. So yeah, that's kind of it in a nutshell. more than happy to hear any comments or feedback from the commission.
Right, thank you. Commissioners, any questions for the applicant? I had at least one. There were two options in the application, and I wondered whether it was still up for grabs as to which one, or whether there's one that you're.
Yeah. Chairman Lane, thanks for reminding me. I was actually going to ask the commission if they had a preference. Both are slightly in a little different vein. One is just says firehouse in kind of big block letters with a kind of horizontal bookmarks. And then the other one is a little bit more, it takes a little bit more liberties, and it's got these kind of flames going up behind it. I think both have a certain charm to them. My guess is that the first one, the one with just the kind of block letters, is going to be a little bit easier to construct. And I think that the finishes that we go with, either the kind of brushed aluminum or the painted black, matte black, would probably be a little bit better with the one with just the block letters. And I can't remember if that is option one. That's option one. So my guess is probably leaning towards option one, but unless someone feels strongly otherwise, we'll probably, as we get into design with the sign company, we'll probably wait to make that decision until then, because we're also trying to do a fundraising campaign to pay for this. And so I think preliminarily the sign's probably between $20,000–$25,000. So one of those options, I'm sure will have a different cost than the other, and that'll inform the decision.
Thanks. For whatever it's worth, my personal preference was for the option one. I didn't particularly care for the flames look in this particular context.
Yes.
Any other questions, comments from commissioners? Commissioner Carpenter.
Yeah. Sorry if you already mentioned this, but what was the plan for electrical, or is there one?
Yeah. So I probably skipped over that a bit. In terms of conduit, we'll certainly show that and try to minimize it. Haven't really thought that through that too much, but in terms of lighting, at least, there would be some external accent lighting that would probably be, low voltage, and then the actual signage element itself, the cabinet, would be internally illuminated, and that would be the extent of the lighting. No flashing lights, no colors or strobes or anything like that. We're trying to keep it classy, and we want to draw attention to the firehouse, not to the sign so much.
Commissioner Hardees, did you have a question, comment?
I was just going to ask for some clarification on the type of signage panel it is. Is this like acrylic channel that letters slip into, and that's how you change it, or is it a different sign technology?
No, I think it would be the letters would be changed manually. So yeah, you would get up there on the ladder, every month, and swap out the letters and slide in the new ones. So kind of old school.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions, comments? Just to review the conditions in the staff report, staff recommends option one, and there are three conditions of approval. One, that color be incorporated into the sign. I assume that's what we're talking about here in terms of the brushed aluminum or black metal look. So if that might be something worth clarifying in a motion. Design approved by the LDDA Design Advisory, and then our standard 2-year approval date from the HPC Commission hearing might also be worth just a condition that they, of course, would get a signed permit. So it'd have to be approval by the city itself. So with that, I'm open to entertaining a motion if anybody's ready to do that or further discuss. Oh, I'm sorry. Nope, throw that back off. I did this last time. My bad. All right, I got to get back into the swing of this. All right, with that, we're going to take a break here and have open it to the public hearing. We had so many of these just kind of standard. Oh, we're not action items. I got rusty. All right, so we're going to open up to public comment here. If there's anyone out there that would like to comment on this application, now's your opportunity to call in. We'll take a short break. Here's the information, and we'll queue you up by your phone number if you are out there. Thanks. See you shortly. Okay, that's 5 minutes. Do we have anybody online?
No, we do not have any callers.
Okay, great. All right, let's bring everybody back. I will officially close the, let's see, start my video as well here. We'll officially close the public hearing portion of that item. And then essentially now it's among the commissioners for any further discussion or a motion. Ms. Kruger? Yeah.
I would just add, you made a great point that I missed. One of the conditions of approval to apply for and receive a building sign permit. So that will need to be added in whatever motion you apply. Thank you.
Thanks.
I think the sign is lovely. I also like option 1. So I will make a motion to approve the certificate of appropriateness with the condition that you get the proper permit from the planning office.
Just to clarify, Commissioner Nord, can we, there are three conditions that staff recommended. And I think it might be best if we had those 3 plus the sign permit.
Yes. Then I would like to amend my motion to include all 3 conditions that staff has recommended. Do I need to list those all out? Okay.
So we have a motion to approve with, just so we get this right, we had a motion to approve with 3 conditions that are in the staff report, plus a 4th to be added to that a permit, sign permits required.
Yes.
All right, we have a motion. Do I have a second?
A second.
That was a tie. I'm gonna give this one to Commissioner Sibley since she hasn't, she wasn't already on the record. So,
Thanks.
so we have a motion to approve with 4 conditions from Commissioner Norton, second from Commissioner Sibley. All in favor, please raise your hand and hold it up there. All right, it looks like unanimous. Okay, no opposed. So unanimous approval. Thank you, Mr. Northcutt, for bringing this through our agency and coming up here and presenting, offering up your information.
Thank you so much.
All right, take care. Okay, we'll close that item and move on to the next, which is 821 Collier Street. That is an application to designate this property as a local historic landmark. Ms. Kruger.
Hi, everyone. We also have Brad and Colleen here today, who are the applicants as well. So again, I think this is a good topic of discussion because it's a rather interesting property. We have a home that was built in 1925, the Culkins and Hawkins house, but it's just outside of the East Side District, just ever so slightly, really. So under our criteria, it would appear to be significant under 3. However, the historic inventory, which I believe was done, I think this was one of the sets done in the 80s, but I could be wrong. The date should be on there. 1998, actually. So I rescind that. So the architectural inventory form done in 1998 kind of discusses it being marginally significant. So, I think this is a really good conversation to have. Do we historically designate this home? Does it at least warrant a merit of significance, which in my time as a historic preservation planner, and in, I think, the previous 5 to 10 years, we've not given one, but that is also an option. So given that I could find, it seemed significant under 3 criteria, I would recommend designation and or that merit of significance. But I would, open it up to the commission and the applicant to discuss their story and why they're so interested in preserving their home and making it a landmark.
All right, thanks. Before we have the applicant jump in, do any commissioners have a question for Ms. Kruger? Yeah, Commissioner Jacoby.
Yes, could you please clarify what a merit of significance is as opposed to designation?
So when we designate a landmark in Longmont, you receive the historic preservation plaque. It's about that big. Sorry, I know it's hard to see over Zoom, but the city provides that, and that's, on your home. A merit of significance would just be like a paper certificate. That means it wouldn't have any additional merits of being a designated landmark. So tax credits, financial incentives, but it also would not need to come before the commission for any exterior modifications, things like that. So no plaque.
Okay. Any other questions for Ms. Kruger? Nope. All right. Well, since we have the applicants here, how about if we let them take the floor, as it were, and give us their thoughts. Welcome.
Thank you. Apologies, the train is just finishing going by. So as you all know, on Collier, we get a nice melody back there. But I'm Colleen and this is Brad. We also want to say thank y'all for having us today. It's been interesting seeing this, backside of it. It's pretty neat. And I guess just a little bit about us. We purchased the house earlier this summer, actually in June. Whenever we purchased the home, it was listed as being built in 1939. Not a super significant difference from 1925, but something that whenever I did some further research on Longmont's website, found previous surveys like the one that Jade mentioned in the late 90s, and I think there might have been one in the early 2000s. Regardless, it mentioned something about appearing on the registry for the Water and Sewage Board in 1926. So it was estimated to have been built 1925, nearly 100 years ago. And doing more research on the home through those previous surveys, also through just learning more about the city of Longmont and its history in itself, was really interesting to both Brad and I. And it was, really fun, almost felt like a project to be able to learn those things and get to know more about our city. So with its proximity to Collier Park and what I believe I read about the redrawing of the boundaries to include this block of 9th in this, more historic designation area, I figured why not, go ahead and see what we can do to preserve this house, not just for, selfish reasons as Brad and I as its current owners, but more for the house itself. I think, or I like to think whenever people go by, they probably smile, it's a little quirky, it's a little different. And I think it had so much character and a bright light, I think, in the neighborhood. So it just felt right to have something to honor it and be able to have it preserved, not for us, but for the future as well. So that's it.
Thank you. Commissioners, what questions might you have for the applicants? Commissioner Norton.
I'm looking at the final photo, which looks like a more recent photo of the house, along with all the historic photos. Is the siding like a vinyl or an aluminum siding? Like, can you kind of explain a little bit about like the characteristics of the house? And you're right, it is charming and quirky. And so just tell us a little bit about like physically what it's like. I think we'd appreciate hearing that.
Certainly.
So one of the reasons we purchased this house was because it was the only one in the, in this neighborhood that kind of looked this certain way. It's got the swoop in the front. And it's got the nice, front stoop area. So it was unique in its own, where it doesn't have an enclosed patio, but it does have all vinyl siding to it. So that has been updated in areas, like this front room here to our left, where you walk into the house. It has the original wood siding, and other parts of the house that do as well on the inside. So you can see the original siding underneath, which we've gone ahead and painted and preserved, and we've kept in the original color. You can also see probably that behind us, we've gone ahead and updated and cleaned up the painting on the exterior, on these shutters and this trim that we're painted in a kind of an off red and purple. So we've gone ahead and cleaned those up. But our big goal is really trying to take this house to back towards its original shape and cleaning it up and really trying to preserve it. And this is part of the step in doing that.
So yeah, so updated siding. It's had, a newer roof, I think, in recent years, which as you can see is that kind of grayish, a nice neutral. But yeah, and it's in pretty good shape. Like Brad mentioned, there is some wooden siding still in the back, which we do have, and we're painting our little shed back there to be red as a nod to the original red color that the house was, as we found in areas of the basement and old windows and things. So it's pretty sweet.
Do you know if the original siding's under the vinyl?
It is, yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Other questions? Yeah, go ahead, Commissioner Jacoby.
So you say the original siding's under there and you want to preserve the house. Do you have any long-term plans for bringing it back to the original design with taking the siding off at some point? Or are you planning just to maintain that as you've got it and move forward from there? Do you have any plans for the immediate future for the house to change it?
No, as far as the siding goes, no immediate plans for it. Just in the case that, I hate to remove everything and see that it's in poor shape or something like that. And so just no immediate plans for the time being. But yeah, just really kind of keeping it as clean and preserved as much as possible. But I know some areas it's just wood and it hasn't been taken care of. And, again, this house is almost 100 years old. And so seeing that wood, starting to on the downside or, in the basement and things like that, it's preserve it as much as possible. But I'm not sure if we want to really kind of bring it to light as much as the entire house.
And in a nod to, like you mentioned, other plans, we are planning on replacing the driveway. It's pretty broken up. It's a patchy asphalt, things like that. So, whether it's paver driveway or classic concrete, I think something just looks really nice and sharp to make the exterior have a brighter appearance without being super modern, of course. As well as a detached garage along the alley. Those are pretty much our only real changes in regards to the exterior of the home.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thanks. Other questions for the applicant? I don't see any. So I think at this point, we'll go ahead and open up the public hearing portion just to, because I actually remembered to do that. And then we'll see if there's any public comment and we'll come back and discuss further from there. So out there, if there is anyone out there that would like to comment on this application, this is again your opportunity to call in. Phone number and meeting ID are there on the screen. We'll take a 5-minute break and be back to see if there is any public comment. Thank you very much. Okay, that's our 5 minutes. Do we have anyone in the queue?
No, we do not.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Bergman. All right, then I will go ahead and first I'll start my video. All right. If everybody comes back here, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing portion of this item and open it for further discussion. Thinking about this one, I'll just give you my 2 cents as a commissioner. I did have a little heartburn over a full-on, landmark designation, especially in light of Carl McWilliams, who prepared these reports, is really pretty much the guru in northern Colorado. If the report didn't find enough significance for a true landmark, the vinyl siding is a little bit of a bugaboo in my in my eyes, and so what I would be more in favor of personally would be a merit of historical significance, because I really appreciate the passion and the the excitement about the house that the applicants show. I think that's really, we want to encourage that. I think it's fantastic. It's awesome. There are lots of other little properties, but we've got a lot of our landmarks are our kind of crown jewels, if you will. And so what I would encourage is a merit of historical significance, and an encouragement that if they came back with a plan, for example, to pull off the vinyl siding and restore the original exterior, then that might merit more of a landmark status. That's my 2 cents. Happy to entertain other comments. And Commissioner Norton, thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Chairman. So looking, and I could have missed it, looking at the report from 98, it looks like Carl evaluated it to National Register criteria. Jade, maybe you can help us. Maybe you've read it a little bit more closely. It looks like it's more to National Register, and he's right? It doesn't meet national criteria status.
That's correct. I mean,
Okay.
Predominantly he does look at National Register, but there is a section at the end that talks about local significance and eligibility field assessment for local landmark, where he ultimately says not eligible. So using Carl's report and kind of my knowledge of the property, I put it towards the city standards again.
Okay.
So that's where we came up with I think it's 1, 3, and 7. So mildly, it does reach those. But I would tend to agree with Commissioner Lane that it probably deserves a merit of significance, which is excellent, and we want more of those. And this is really exciting. So that's kind of, sorry, that was a long-winded answer for the.
It was perfect. Okay, I just wanted clarity on that, and I appreciate that. I do think that local designations are important, partly because, I think we can have more flexibility than national level designation. So I just wanted to make sure we weren't trying to hold the property to the same criteria. That's my only comment for now.
Okay. And yeah, I'll get to open it up here just in a second, but I did find there were 2 spots in the report under item 42 in his evaluation. It says, as a result, the property probably does not qualify to be listed as a local landmark. And then under 44, he does list it as not eligible under City of Local Landmark field assessment. So that's kind of what informed me that I do really like the fact that we have this other, it feels like a medium step to me, like an intermediary step of this the other designation. So it is in the report, which gives us, I think, some ground to stand on if that's something that everybody else is in agreement with. Commissioner Jacoby, you had a.
Yeah, just to play devil's advocate, and I'm not sure how I feel about the designation of this house as well. Let me say that, but when you make a landmark designation, it serves two purposes. Yes, you signify that this is one of our crown jewels, as you said, of our town, and should be designated and recognized as such. But it also is a tool to control future development of the house and the exterior of the house. This house is in the historic East Side neighborhood. It's 95 years old. It does have vinyl siding, but it looks similar, I presume, to the original siding on the house. And if you gave a merit of significance, we wouldn't have any control over the future appearance of the house. I mean, 20 years from now, someone could put an incongruous addition on the back with a merit of significance. If someone could make all kinds of changes that we wouldn't like as much. And since a landmark designation is a tool to help control the appearance of the neighborhood and the house, perhaps we should consider giving it landmark status if, and I don't know if we can do this, if you could have the understanding that, and someday the vinyl siding is going to die, right? Cheap plastic vinyl siding, I've had houses with that, and that stuff fades and it cracks and it gets brittle. It's going to need to be replaced, just like everything else replaces on a house. Perhaps we could make it a landmark designated house with a clear understanding that when the siding needs repair or replacement, it needs replaced, needs to go and rehabilitate the original siding. And if it had the original siding, I wouldn't have any problems with making this a landmark house. With the vinyl siding, I do, but maybe with that control and the understanding that we would not approve rehabilitating the vinyl at some point, maybe it's worth making a landmark house. I just throw that out for thought.
Thanks for those comments. Any other commissioners? Your thoughts? I don't, just Commissioner Sibley, I don't see your live stream. So if you're raising your hand, I can't see you. Commissioner Hardee's.
Sorry.
I was just going to say, agreed with the earlier point that, you know, the merit of significance would be a great step here with encouragement to, at some point when it's feasible, to rehabilitate the siding. You know, we don't know what condition the wood is in under there. You know, I've had seen similar projects where it required considerable amount of replacement material, you know, sometimes custom milled to match and things like that, but it may be in good shape and just requires, you know, good, you know, scraping and caulking and prep and paint. So I'd say taking that intermediate step makes more sense with encouragement to deal with the siding and hopefully come back with another application for landmark status. So I get the impression that would be well received.
Thanks. Other Commissioner Norton?
I'm a little bit on the fence. I don't disagree with any of the points that you guys have made. And I mean, vinyl siding is almost always a deal killer, right? Like it's up there with windows. I don't know. I do want to really acknowledge how wonderful it is that that Brad and Colleen are so excited about this house and excited about the historic value of it, and not the value, the values and characteristics of their house and being in this neighborhood. And I also, I'm uncomfortable with us kind of thinking about historic preservation as a hammer to keep people from doing things to their house instead of, you know, making sure that we're kind of celebrating the things that make our town unique and helping to preserve those characteristics without there's a lot of issues with historic preservation being gatekeeping, and I don't want us to go down that road and use landmark status and other tools of historic preservation to kind of force people to have neighborhoods that look like the way we want them to look like, right? So I want to make sure that we don't really use historic preservation in that way. I think that it looks like kind of the bones of this house are great. Like it does have a really unique little swooping roof line. The door and the windows retain those unique features with like the keystone type of characteristics and that curve in the door. I would probably lean towards more landmark status, but if the group decided to go with this more intermediary, I would support that as well.
Thank you, Commissioner Carpenter. Yeah.
I just, correct me if I'm wrong, but don't we have houses designated that don't have the original windows, for instance, like vinyl windows? Because to me, it seems one of okay, some houses have vinyl windows by the time they get designated, and we still say it's okay. And then some houses like this, that seems like less of an issue to have covered up siding. I guess that's my main hesitation to denying the landmark status. Is other than that, I would say that the addition set back far enough that it's clear what the historic, the period of significance is. And there's, it might not be an extremely famous person in Longmont, but the people that have lived there have also represented just, another part of Longmont's history, a mailman and, whatnot. So I don't know. I just think everything being, just because one specific area isn't, screaming out at us that it makes it significant, all the other areas being possibly up there. I don't know. I'm on the fence too. So that's kind of, that's all I have.
I agree. I think Ms. Kruger, you started off. I think you anticipated this was going to be a discussion that wasn't exactly clear cut. Commissioner Sibley, do you have any comments that you'd like to share with us? Or I'll put you on the spot here, but I want to make sure you get you.
Yeah, no, it's okay. It's interesting because part of me was like all excited to see more movement and, grabbing some houses in a neighborhood that doesn't necessarily have a lot of historic homes, quote unquote, there's nothing designated necessarily. So I like the idea of spreading that out. But to Commissioner Norton's point about not using it as a hammer, I get that too. So I am kind of with everyone. I'm not opposed to it. I like the fact that there is so much character there. The fact that someday that siding will get replaced. If it is designated, then we do have a little bit of a say to it. But yeah, that I see points to all of it. So I like the intermediary, but I also like the idea of designating as well. So I'm really not opposed to either. To either idea. So I think, yeah, I have to say, I'm very thankful for the homeowners of being so excited about this house though. I think that's wonderful to see. But that's it. I wish I could be more definitive for you guys.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Ms. Kruger, you had a comment? Nope. Looks like we might have lost your live stream. Well, we'll come back to it. Commissioner Jacoby.
For what it's worth, Mr. Calkins You talk about historic significance. He's probably the son of Ben Calkins, who was the first European American born in the Chicago, Colorado colony. His house is just down the street from there. And
Oh,
people typically, they settled on the same street in this neighborhood. A lot of families, they'd have brothers and sisters and siblings and kids down the street from each other back when the town was founded. So a little tidbit of history, if that tips anyone one way or the other.
All right, thanks. I'll hang on for just a minute because I think it looks like Jade might be jumping out and jumping back in. Just to come back to the question of hammer and incentive. I mean, my thought was incentive. I mean, that was my I was not trying to make this a punitive thing. I really love the fact that these folks are really excited about the house. I think that's awesome. I mean, it's really great. And so my thought is, hey, I mean, if we think as a commission, what would we like to see, right? In the end, if we would like to see, less, I mean, yes, sometimes the houses have vinyl windows and maybe the rest of the character is enough that we say it's okay. In this particular case, obviously all the other components are really cool, right? Of the roof lines and all the things we've talked about. And this is maybe a little Achilles heel. So my perspective was, well, if our end goal is to get, the vinyl siding off and have a restored siding that makes this house just really shine, then this intermediary step maybe hopefully would be an incentive, right? They're obviously positively engaged in the house. Let's reward that with some recognition and say, hey, if you want to take it to the next step, come back in with an application to, take out the vinyl siding and restore it and landmark status and get the whole thing approved and get the tax benefit for doing that work, right? And we've incentivized an end goal that is a win for everyone, right? Versus saying, well, okay, let's just give it to them because it's cool and they're excited, but then maybe nothing happens. And so that's my perspective is let's do it as an incentive and not and hope that that's what we get out of it.
Yeah.
But whether that's just my perspective. Where Jay, did we get you back?
Yes, I'm so sorry. My computer decided to reboot at a really horrible time. Hopefully I am not repeating something that's already been said, but a few notes. Again, so excited that Brad and Colleen are excited. I think this is very important. When we think about creating a historic preservation plan, I think it's important for us to think about really highlighting areas where we think certificates of merit could be an option and kind of trying to target homes of that nature, and also giving folks more resources. I think, this is a perfect example of, we could award a certificate of merit now and provide Brad and Colleen with the resources on what would make their home more significant and more close to the landmark status. So just thinking about those things as we move forward with our program as well, because I think they're not exactly clear currently.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. Very good points. All right, any further? This has been one of the livelier discussions we've had as a group, so that's good. Not so. Any other comments or questions? Commissioner Carpenter.
I guess the only last thought is if we went ahead with the whole incentive approach with, awarding the certificate of merit, is just, public perception and or, I don't know, just making sure that the public is aware that that's not necessarily what would stop their house from being significant if they wanted to come forward to, just figuring out a way for us to kind of communicate that better. I don't know how, but, people tend to to think that it's going to be the same if they try to get designation. And yeah, it's just important that we make it known that all of these cases are all different. So they all have kind of their own levels of criteria that we are judging based on.
Great, thanks. Well, does anybody feel bold enough to make a motion?
All right, I think, yeah, I think I'd like to make a motion for the certificate, and hope that they go for the plaque later. Not that that's going to be in the motion, but.
Okay, so a motion to recommend that the property receive a merit of historical significance.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
With the sort of implied understanding that we would encourage working with Ms. Kruger to learn a little more about what might get them to a status level where a landmark would be.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So we have a motion to recommend the property receive a merit of historical significance. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. So a motion by Commissioner Sibley, seconded by Commissioner Hardees. Any further discussion? No. Then all in favor of that motion, please go ahead and raise your hand.
Aye.
Okay, we have 3 in favor, and those opposed. We have 2. Do we have 2? Okay, you got to keep the hands up there because I don't know. All right, so we have 3 opposed. So the motion failed.
Okay.
Okay. So at this point, we have an opportunity to either another motion for something else, or a motion to defer the matter to next month. Commissioner Jacoby.
Since we're all very ambivalent, why don't we try the other way? I make a motion that we approve the house for historic designation.
Okay, we have a motion then to recommend that the property be designated a historic landmark. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
So we have a motion to approve the property as a designated historic landmark. Motion by Commissioner Jacoby, seconded by Commissioner Norton. All in favor of that motion, please raise your hand.
We'll go for it.
So we have, is that, I'm assuming your hand's still up there. Yeah. So we have 4 votes in favor, all those opposed. Right. So the motion does carry with 4 approvals and basically 4-2. All right.
All right, Brad and Colleen, you guys got to do something about that. Tearing us apart. We're tearing this commission apart.
This truly is the first split vote we've had in probably 2 years. So, and I hope you take it in the spirit that is intended. I think everyone supports what you're doing. I think we have some philosophical discussions about, or differences about where the line ought to be drawn, but no one is denying that you should be excited about your house and preserve it and do all that. So I think, we certainly encourage you to keep moving forward on the path that you have started.
Great, thank y'all. It means
all right.
Yeah, thank you.
Brad and Colleen, I just wanted to let you know that the next steps would be that this goes before City Council as an ordinance. I know I wasn't sure that it would get this far, so we haven't discussed those next steps. So I'll be in contact with you about when that will go and what that will look like. And you'll get to watch on, City Council is kind of exciting. So congratulations.
All right. Thank you very much. Thanks much.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks for your time.
Thank y'all.
Bye.
All right. Well, that was fun. It's good to have a little, push and pull sometimes. It's all right. Okay. We'll close the 821 Collier and move on to, this is a discussion item only, so I won't have to ask for a public hearing anymore. We have more information on the Highway 119 and Zlatan development proposal. Ms. Kruger, do you have a report for us?
Yes. Okay, we're back. So this time we will need to review this additional material and make a formal recommendation as this will move forward to planning and zoning and then city council. So this will be the last time that we'll review this project. Basically, we'll have a discussion on the new material items. We have the applicant here and the consultant and several other folks on the team. So they'll answer any questions you may have about the additional materials. And then I'll take notes on the formal recommendation and type that up in a memo. But as a reminder, I know you're all aware, but just as a reminder, the recommendation from the Historic Preservation Commission is on historic significance and merit of the site, not on use. So that would not be included in your review, just an FYI. So the additional materials sent out were that additional archaeological testing we asked for, as well as the structural assessment, and you should all have that in your packet. So hopefully you got a chance to look at that ahead of time, because it was pretty interesting and a little lengthy. So I will open it up to the commission to just start asking questions of the applicant, if that seems fair, unless there are any questions on process.
Any questions for Ms. Kruger before we bring in the applicant? No. Okay. If the applicant would like to kind of tune in here, share your screen and join in. What, let's see, we lost Commissioner Norton. Staff, I'm not sure if we just lost Commissioner Norton here or if she had to jump out, but
I will check with Steph, Chair. I'm grateful we don't have any more voting issues, but if she needs to get back in, we can open it for her.
okay.
I don't believe the applicants have anything to show, so it should just be discussion.
Question. Okay. All right. Well, then I'll open it up to commissioners' questions to the applicant on the information that was submitted. Any questions? Yeah, Commissioner Hardees.
Just reading through it, it looks like a structural review only. Was there no historic structure assessment done for this yet, or is that still intended?
I believe the historical, structure assessment was included, so it was done, and Dustin's on the call and he can kind of talk through his experience on the historical side, and he completed a structural review based on that, as well as just renovation or potential of these buildings or reclaiming them. So I think that was part of the process and the cost associated with it. Dustin, I don't know if you're out there, maybe you can talk a little bit about your background and.
Yeah, I'm here. We've worked on a lot of projects like these where the new owners want to upgrade different historical sites. And there's a big problem on this due to the zoning. It's zoned commercial, and previously it was used as agricultural. And those two are in conflict with each other. The structure isn't in good enough shape to do anything commercially with it. and you have a barn and a residence and there's no commercial aspect to the property. So it's going to be difficult to, there's not going to be much left that looks anything like it would look like today to get this to a commercial zoning use.
Okay. Commissioner Hardy's any follow-up, or are you?
Well, yeah, I guess, I was expecting, and I guess it probably wasn't promised to us, but I was hoping that a more thorough evaluation of it from a preservation standpoint might have been done, but certainly the structural review is a part of a historic structure assessment, and I appreciate that was done and the information included. But it certainly it's. I think we would all acknowledge that converting a former agricultural use into a new use is not simple, and it's sometimes more expensive than tearing down and building new, but that doesn't mean it's the wrong thing to do. And I would have been nice to see that addressed, in a little bit more of a an open-minded fashion towards the historic character.
In my opinion, one of the problems right now is the structure is not really safe, and there's people living in it from time to time. That really scares me for the current owner, the liability that's going on out there. There's no good ways to seal parts of that up. Vagrants are in there, and there are some pretty sketchy structural parts of that building. Mainly the main columns. There's no way to assess the main columns, how they've been embedded into the concrete. We don't know if those have rotted out or not. I would assume they have. With my experience, that is the way it's constructed, and everything there. I'm concerned that parts of that are going to fall down and people are going to be in it.
Other questions or comments for the applicant? I see Commissioner Norton, we have you back here. I think that's good. It's all right. Glad you could come back, because I think you were one of those looking for, especially the archaeological component of the survey. So I'll give her a minute to connect.
Yeah, I'm sorry. My computer died, so I am on my phone, which also means I just lost access to the packet. But I will catch up with the conversation. I apologize.
Okay. Well, we do have the applicant here, and it's really just a question of kind of opening up to questions of, from our commission to them concerning the information they provided, and if it adequately addressed concerns, or if there were other questions or concerns you'd like to raise with them. Any other commissioners like to ask a question, make a comment?
I believe the archaeological consultant, Melanie, is also on this call, so perhaps she could talk about the findings from that additional survey work that the commissioners asked for last time.
Yeah, I'm here. This is Melanie with SWCA. If you have any questions about the testing that was conducted.
You know, maybe just a brief overview for people who are not archaeologists would be really helpful.
Sure. So we went and did some limited testing at the site that was really focused on kind of high potential areas for where we thought, based on the layout of, you know, the farm and also kind of the depositional context, that would have good potential for encountering something if there was something there to encounter. So we did limited testing, just 8 shovel tests. We were in part limited by, there's a number of utilities that are running through this property. And so that did limit where we could put some shovel tests, and in terms of time and budget as well. So we needed to be able to get out there quick and do this to have some information for you for this meeting. So we sank about 8 shovel tests. Those shovel tests were concentrated around the house and the garage structure, just kind of to the northwest of it. And there is a map in that report that shows kind of where all the tests were located. That is a fenced area that kind of focuses the house and the garage, and there's a shed there, kind of that little area. So that's where the tests were placed. They were excavated in 10 centimeter levels with all the sediment was screened through 1/4 inch mesh. And then we documented the stratigraphy that was found and any artifacts that were encountered in the shovel tests. So all 8 shovel tests that we sank were positive for historic artifacts. No features like a privy. We didn't find a privy. We're pretty sure there is one out there, just given the nature of the settlement, but we did not encounter it. So no real specific features were encountered, but all shovel tests were positive for historic artifacts, down to about between 40 and 50 centimeters. It was clear that after that, the soils were really compact and unlikely to have much stuff deeper than that. So the artifacts really date to the early to mid 20th century. It's possible there could be older artifacts elsewhere, but we didn't encounter them. Artifacts that were encountered include ceramic sherds, a variety of glass that we know it dates early. There was aqua glass, and I believe there was some sun-colored amethyst glass, which is early. There's some structural remains like window glass fragments. There was some burned bone. In one of the shovel tests, I have the report pulled up here. There was some staining associated with the charcoal pieces, and looked like maybe some oxidated sediment. That overall, this suggests this was probably this area was a midden, which is basically where they're throwing their trash at. So the tests do suggest that there is archaeological potential at the site. It's limited in depth, so it doesn't go super deep. It's really, probably the top 50 centimeters. We know that there has been some disturbance of the soils on the farm, obviously just from being inhabited, for 70 plus years, building on it, the farm and all the shed and stuff, and having probably, agricultural activities going on there. So we know that at least some portion of that, the soil at the farm has been disturbed. Does look there's probably some intact stuff, but again, not very deep. And it also really confirmed that, and this wasn't mostly what we were looking at, we were really focused on, trying to figure out what might be there historically, but it did also really confirm that that area is really unlikely to have any significant prehistoric deposits. The soils deeper than kind of what we were looking at in the historic range are too old. to have really significant prehistoric archaeology. So that's unlikely to be there. So, based on this, we would recommend that the site stay eligible under criterion D. But again, the testing was limited. There's likely a privy, we did not find it. And we were limited where we could put the shovel test because there are quite a few utilities running through this larger parcel. So we had fun with 811.
Questions for Ms. Medeiros?
I don't have any questions for Ms. Medeiros, and it doesn't sound like anybody else does either. And again, I apologize. I can't see everybody now with the screen.
Sure.
So if I jumped in on anybody. I think that this answered some questions, right? The site still remains eligible and still remains eligible under all 4 criteria, right? The site is still incredibly important to the history of Longmont. I recognize from the engineering report how much money it would cost to rehabilitate this. Again, I think we had some questions that weren't really answered about what the responsibility of the current owner who's just left this derelict for a decade and has added to that cost and to that dereliction of this property. The technical term is demolition by neglect. And I don't think that any of this information changes my opinion about the merits of the project on this particular site and demoing this property for that project. And, I would really like to know, what ideas the project proponents and the current landowner have for, mitigating this, trying to move forward with doing any development on this property.
Well, I can't speak for the ownership. Well, I know he had to jump off because he had another meeting, but they have zero interest in doing anything, on the property as far as a restoration, standpoint. And I know that they have also offered to give it to the city, which the city does not want. So I would know that that's like their kind of position. I did reach out to the Longmont Museum and Cultural Center to see about, pictures and what they had in relationship to this farm. And he was actually pretty surprised to even know that this was connected to William Dickens and, there was historical relevance to it and wasn't aware of any pictures. And we have, bridged the conversation with them if they would like any of these particular items from the barns for the museums, they could come get them. Foundationally, I think what you're dealing with is structures that are sitting completely on the ground, are leaning, that are built so aged that what Dustin was saying, and I don't know if he's still on or he had to jump off, despite even trying to renovate, they won't look at all, even in a restoration standpoint. If someone were to pay the $3.5 million, it's not going to look at all like what you're seeing currently in front of you, because we'd have to gut these things so much. And there's been graffiti. There's been, you can go into the details a little bit more in the report. I think it's greater than just structural issues, along with asbestos and everything else. And there's rotting. There's all kinds of things that, would make the restoration of these impossible. Plus, these buildings are, the barn itself is in the floodplain. And so that in itself would have to be addressed.
So again, there's questions. That is a ditch. That is a human-made irrigation canal system. It's a water conveyance system. That whether it is truly within a floodplain, I think is a question. I reached out to my colleagues at both FEMA and the Army Corps on this, and we were all skeptical that that's a true floodplain, but we would need some confirmation from the city, from the city engineer who is responsible for identifying floodplains. But I think a lot of this is a little bit moot. I think my bigger question then is, how are you going to pay back the people of Longmont for A, letting it sit derelict, and then B, demolishing this for a 7-Eleven? Like, what is your mitigation? What are you offering in order to develop this? And I don't think the city should take this. I think that offer from the landowner to give it to the city is really kind of disingenuous and really misses the point of the irresponsibility of allowing this property to get into this condition to begin with. So when I say what mitigation, that's what I'm asking you. Like, how are you going to pay back the people of Longmont for losing this important piece of their history?
So a part of the project is we are dedicating the greenway to the city. So they will be able to capture the greenway, which is part of the comprehensive plan, which then allows them to complete the trail system and the things that they had envisioned in doing. And we're also looking to provide a cash contribution, to them to complete the trail on the east side of the creek itself. And the thought process was that we would then do some sort of placard that kind of memorialized the area, because the farm in itself at one time was not just these barns, it was all of the surrounding area that is now industrial development. So a portion of this farm has already been redeveloped. This is just the last piece of it. And so that is kind of the give, is that, we get to take these buildings that are falling, that are really a liability, for everybody to be there.
That doesn't work for me.
Well, I mean, I'd encourage you to take a trip out there and get inside the buildings themselves and see the profanity, see the damage that's been done, see what's happening out there. And the adjacent residential properties would like to see them come down as well. But that
I'm familiar with the property, and the closest residential property is quite some distance and separated by that ditch. So, I mean, let's just accept that, we're not, I don't accept some of the basic merits of these arguments.
Okay.
But my question is, what are you going to do to pay back the people of Longmont for the loss of the historic properties? Dedicating the greenway, that's great for the Environmental Commission. It's great for recreation, but that's not historic preservation. And a plaque, I think, is completely inadequate. So you guys really need to come up with a mitigation plan, proposal, idea that is going to really honor the history of this site. I cannot think of a single other site that I have seen in my professional life that has been eligible for the National Register of Historic Places under all 4 criteria. And I think that the level of significance of this property is really being lost on the project proponents right now.
Okay.
Other commissioners have comments and questions to follow up on that? Jade, it might be helpful if you can remind us all exactly what it is that we are and are not attempting to do. I mean, what our kind of lane is here for making a recommendation, just because I know we've got a lot of discussion, but at some point we've got to come back to our directive to the Planning Commission.
Correct. So the formal recommendation should just be based on historic merit or historic significance of the site and whether or not the HPC, supports or does not support or has additional recommendations for, maintaining some historic element or something else they'd like to see the developer to do. I know a plaque was not an option, but like a plaque or some other like picture. I know we discussed some kind of picture like mural system or something like that. So if there was another recommendation that they wanted to include before it goes before planning and zoning to approve the zoning change is why it's going to P&Z and then city council.
Okay, thanks. Commissioners, other thoughts or considerations here? Commissioner Norton, is there anything that you might suggest if it sounds like we're moving towards making a motion about our recommendation regarding the project to the Planning Commission. What might that include in addition to just a simple yay or nay?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. Are we able as a commission to find an opportunity? And obviously this would have to, time is of the essence. I know this is a project moving forward. Are we able to find some time even over email to kind of brainstorm some ideas? Like, what do we need that we could ask for as mitigation for this project? And I don't mean like us even as a commission, but like what would be a public benefit to the city of Longmont that we could come up with? Or is that asking a lot of everybody?
I think, Commissioner Norton, that's a good idea. I think what the recommendation could ask for some additional public benefit that's related to historic, and then this discussion could be continued in the next meeting or the following, but it could simultaneously continue in the process because we need to give this recommendation before the next Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. So that might be an option, and also keep things off email because we want to be careful with that as well.
Right. And I think that may be where we are at. I don't think it would be appropriate to delay some form of action here. I think we should do that. And as much to communicate, this is partly communicating the commission's perspective to the applicant, but also, of course, in the end result, we're communicating the commission's perspective on the project to the other boards that will be the final decision-making bodies in this process. So if you take in mind, you're as much communicating to the people on the, to the planning and zoning, and I assume if it's rezoning, then it'll end up going to city council. So you've got two other boards that you're communicating to.
Well, we've discussed the need to have, for a lot of different types of work, right? So we wanted a city plan that we had put in money for. Could we request something like that where we have funding to put in place, a citywide historic preservation plan? And, that would help us avoid some of these issues in the future, or have a more clear path, frankly, for developers and landowners when they have ideas for development projects in this city.
Right. And I think it's probably important to understand. I mean, it's clear that this has made another, it's made us aware of yet another, outlying farm property that was important to the development of Longmont that's largely been sort of forgotten. We don't have the data. I mentioned this in our last hearing, that we don't really have a lot of data on what that is. We don't have landmarks based on them. We don't have any restrictions. And so when someone comes in to look at a piece of property, they're going to get a certain perspective based on that property, based on what's in the codes and what's in the requirements out there. And if there's no identification, if there's no heads up that this is potentially a major issue, or even a process for them to hit early, then we get here, where there's already a plan and there's an expectation that this is what's going to happen, and then everybody's unhappy. I mean, everybody's unhappy in this meeting, right? I mean, we're unhappy, they're unhappy. And at the very least, is there a way to try to use this process to learn from and attempt to prevent something at a later date? There is, and perhaps that may be, some form of, financial contribution that is earmarked for preservation planning, so that maybe even specifically to agricultural properties in Longmont, maybe an appropriate ask.
Yeah, I would agree with especially doing something agricultural based, because it seems to be the biggest problem that we are facing right now. Is these huge parts of our history being lost because of large gaps in our planning.
Yeah, I would just add, I mean, we know that this is an issue, and this is something that I would certainly encourage we address with the historic preservation plan. So hopefully that's something we can do in the next year or so. However, if this doesn't, we still need to get back to this specific development proposal in this recommendation. Unfortunately, I can't make a historic plan happen, before the next commission meeting. Unfortunately, I wish it worked this way, but so we'll need to think about, a different form of public benefit if that were a recommendation for this project specifically.
Right. Okay, well, I think in the interest of just moving forward, we ought to get a motion on the floor in regards to the commission's perspective on this property and what our recommendation would be to planning and zoning.
Okay. I mean, if the whole mitigation question is still something that we are having an issue grappling with as a commission, go back to those basics like you had asked about a few minutes ago, Chairman Lane, about, what it is that we are tasked to do. And so we're tasked to either say we approve of this or we don't approve of this. So from a historic preservation point of view, I make a motion that we recommend that this project not move forward, or this project not be approved.
And I think it would be worthwhile to, I think, explain and for the reasons you mentioned it earlier, that that it's eligible the National Register under 4 criteria, which is a rarity, right? And so without a better preservation plan, that we're just losing a piece of history for not much community gain.
Yeah. Brilliant. I will amend my motion and I will say that I recommend this not move forward because it is a significant property under all 4 criteria, making it eligible for the National Register, without, as you said, without a better preservation plan in place. And then that should give us some room to maybe discuss other public benefits or mitigation that might be able to be asked for in the future. Is that correct? Okay.
Yeah, I think so. And I think hopefully that gives at least Ms. Kruger an opportunity to explain further where this commission is coming from.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
So there is a motion on the floor. Do I have a second? Commissioner Jacoby seconds the motion. And unless there is any further discussion, I would ask all those in favor of, I don't want to restate the whole thing.
We know what it is.
Yeah. All those in favor, please raise your hand. All right. So that's a unanimous motion. To the applicant, I do appreciate and the commission does appreciate the time that you spent with us. And I hope you understand that it just given we may understand your position, but given the richness of the site and what's happening out there, there's just really no way we can stand behind what's happening. We have to put a voice out there that speaks for that history. And that's what our perspective is. So we do appreciate the time and the effort that you put forward, and we'll see how the process goes as you move through the rest of the city approval and planning process. All right. Thank you all. I'm going to close that portion of the hearing. Get back to my agenda. Okay. So this is just or comments from individual HPC commissioners. Does anybody have anything else they'd like to add? Commissioner Jacoby.
There we go. Yeah, I want to get back to what Jade touched on in the very beginning of the meeting. When I joined the commission, I found it remarkable that we have 2 residential National Historic Districts that have less redevelopment guidelines than almost all the other developments in our subdivisions in Longmont, because they're all guided by, their homeowners associations and covenants, and we have nothing in Old Town like that. And it's heartening to hear that we're finally getting money for that. But and I reached out to several of you. I don't know how much you know about the zoning history in town, and forgive me, but let me just briefly review a little bit of what's going on on the east side and west side. In the 70s, the west side was zoned residential single family. The east side, they were scraping houses and putting in apartments. And that started the preservationist movement here. And the city made a specific zoning classification for the historic east side, RLE1, residential low density established. And that included a lot of developmental recommendations and restrictions. And all of that went by the wayside 3 years ago with Envision Longmont and homogenization of the residential areas. The east side and the west side are both now residential single family. And so those restrictions in development went away 3 years ago. And in that time, there are at least 3 homes that have had construction on them that really is detrimental to the character of the neighborhood. And there's a lot of developmental pressure and the real estate's going crazy. There's one home, I think it's 830 Emory. It's owned by some Texans, and they started tearing it down. And now it's in limbo, construction limbo. There's a chain link fence around it. Nothing's being done because we caught it, said, hey, whoa, this is not appropriate, because we don't have those guidelines in place. And it sounds like we're moving forward towards that, but these things go slowly and it can be maddening. And so I would think, so I have a copy of the previous specific use standards from RLE1 for the east side. And they've been used for 30 years and there's been no complaints about them. And there's a lot of people agitating to at least get that back while we're working on new guidelines. And I think that's reasonable given the developmental pressure we're having now everywhere in the Front Range. And with the 3 homes, and I could go into detail on the homes if you'd like to know about them. There's been a change in setback guidelines, and 2 of the houses have additions put on that have taken advantage of that. And really, it doesn't fit the character of the neighborhood. And the 3rd house, as I said, is now in partial demolition and just sitting behind a chain link fence. So I would like to make a motion that we ask City Council to temporarily reinstate the RLE development guidelines in locations where they were previously used, which is the historic East Side neighborhood, which extends beyond the National Historic District. It goes from basically the district, the RLE district went from Kimbark to Martin, and from 3rd to 9th. But to just reinstate those, ask City Council to reinstate those RLE guidelines and setbacks until planning can come up with modified restrictions. So I make a motion that we make this recommendation to City Council. I know that the budget is going to be discussed at their next meeting next week. And this issue might come up because I know others in the neighborhood on the east side have been talking to folks on the City Council.
Yeah. So what we would need to do would be, we could put it on our agenda for next month, but without putting it on our agenda, opening up for public comment, having it as a discussion item, going through all that process, we wouldn't be able to, just sort of unilaterally move and have that be an action in this particular portion of the meeting. But I don't see any reason why we couldn't put it on the agenda for discussion.
That sounds good. We could also maybe pull up some of those RLE guidelines so you could all see that. Yeah, that would be great. So perhaps, Ms. Kruger, that might be something we could do. Do we need a motion to put that on the agenda?
Are you asking to put this on the agenda as a discussion item? Or an item that we would vote on? I am a little hesitant to start this quite yet because that would only affect the east side, and we want to look at this in its entirety, right, with the original town, and that includes the west side. We also have the downtown district, which is another national district, so we technically have 3. So I think that it might be beneficial for us to see how the budget plays out and then figure out exactly what we have funding to do, and then go from there. Because I think we'll have more energy to just kind of get going as soon as we have that information, as opposed to trying to go through an additional process in the meantime that also only affects one side of town.
My whole intent was just make a stopgap measure that was very simple. I mean, just to reinstate the guidelines where they were before, just temporarily until you could do all that. But that's going to take time. And that's why I was thinking, I don't see it as an either or proposition. I think it's something we could do perhaps while you're moving forward and working on it. And yes, obviously the west side needs protection as well. and they should be the same guidelines, I would think, for all historic areas. But that's going to take time to develop, I would think. And it's been 3 years. And again, these houses are forever. What's going on out there? The two that have additions already are rather unfortunate. And the third one, I'm sure the people who were trying to develop it, now it's half deconstructed. They're very unhappy. I think we should probably do something sooner rather than later, at least to get started. So I would suggest making this voting measure next meeting.
Yeah, I do think you have to understand that, the whole process is a time intensive bit. And obviously the zoning code was just changed over the course of, many month-long process with multiple public hearings. And so, even if we as a commission wanted to do something like that, I think the likelihood of the city just sort of kind of plugging that in from before without taking a long process there was a reason why they didn't put it in, I'm presuming, as part of that process. I don't think it's going to get plugged in, just, I guess we forgot that and plug it back in. Their process is lengthy. And to be fair, we have a bunch of these, right? The demolition was a huge, we need something, and we're still working on that. Today's meeting was, we need something, right? We need something to protect these agricultural properties. We got a lot of issues and we need to figure out a way to get a whole bunch of them addressed. I don't know what the best process is, but I guess my point is none of it's going to move fast. I think it'd be worth putting this thing on an agenda for discussion, so that we can at least all get aware of it next meeting. And then if there's an appetite to do something further than that in the following meeting, I know that's not probably what you want to hear, but I think that might be the better course of action, just to pace this thing out and not, we don't want to be so scattered we get nothing done either. Okay, sorry. Yeah, Commissioner Norton.
Thank you. I'm wondering, going back to your request of Jade and staff earlier, if there's a way to, encourage legal. I know they're probably very, very busy, just like everybody is, of reviewing some of the comments that we had proposed back during our retreat. Like if we can kind of highlight the urgency of returning to that and us really getting some proposals nailed down to take to City Council so that we can address these changes that Commissioner Jacoby is talking about. I really sense from him that there's a feeling of urgency on the east side, that they're going to lose things before our processes are able to come to fruition. So I don't know if that's an additional plea, Jade, or if that's
so this is
asking to have it. Okay.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Commissioner Norton. This is one of our highest code priorities. We've had lots of internal discussions, so I'm working as hard as I can on it, and so I will give another plea to legal and try to get this moving forward, even if it comes in two parts, and we do administrative type changes first, and then a second ordinance to change some of our more substantive items like the demo stuff like that. So we are working on it, and I will give an additional plea of urgency.
Thanks, Jade. Any other commissioners like to make a comment?
Well, not that it means a whole lot, but it's interesting that tonight's meeting, we were all kind of like back and forth about, the house with the certificate versus the designation. And then we've also got on the other end of that, the Dickens Farm area. And yeah, I just want to reiterate that myself, for myself, that yeah, we do need to kind of narrow things down a little bit for planning and whatnot, because you know, like with the house, we're wanting to save it. We're, you know, to like part of that, for me anyways, to vote for, you know, having a designation and all this is trying to save these things, because we don't have a lot of ways to save them right now. So so I'm glad that we're talking about this, because it's really creeping up quickly on us, and I think it is because of the development and all that, which we've discussed. So so anyways, I'm glad this is on the table, I guess. Again.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anyone else? No? Okay. All right. Comments from City Council?
No comments. Thank you, guys.
Okay. Then we are at adjournment. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Sure. Motion to adjourn.
All right. Motion by Commissioner Sibley, a second.
Second.
And a second by Commissioner Jacoby. All those in favor of adjournment, please raise your hand. And that is unanimous. We are adjourned. Thank you all for your time and your discussions. Staff, thank you for all your support and information.
Good night, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, everybody. Good night.
Good night.